Okay. So hi, I am Jen Sinelli Miller, and I am from DelDOT Planning. We have partnered with the University of Delaware to produce these lunch and learn events that give you more information about some of the things happening at DelDOT in partnership with some of our consultants, but also with University of Delaware. So today we're excited to bring you Mr. Jim Pappas from our Resiliency section, and he and Stephanie Johnson will be presenting today on electric vehicles and the statewide efforts for remaining resilient and moving into the electric world. So, Jim, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Jen. Thanks for the opportunity. So good morning, everyone. Jim Pappas, I'm the Director for Resilience and Sustainability here at DelDOT. Stephanie Johnson is the Assistant Director, and we're the team of two that is working on many aspects associated with resiliency and sustainability. So take the next few minutes to kind of talk about some of our programs, and then leave plenty of opportunity to kind of talk and answer any questions that folks may have. So what we'll be going over here this morning is, again, the electric vehicle program. I'm going to kind of break that up into two parts. There's a term called NEVI that you may have heard of. So that's the National Electric Vehicle Implementation. So that's the federal government. You may have heard that President Biden wants 500,000 charging stations out and about by 2030. So we have the funding to do that. And also, we are in partnership with DENREC to come up with a state of Delaware program as well that potentially would be funded with state funds. So talk about those, and then talk about three other programs that Stephanie and I are working on, again, associated with the federal legislation. Talk about our carbon reduction strategy, environmental product declarations, and also our resilience improvement plan that was just recently submitted to the federal highways and approved. We think we were the second state to get approval. Kentucky was first. We tried like Dickens to get it in there first, but they got it in there before it. But we'll talk about that. So just kind of to start with, just talking about electric vehicles, and why are we and all the country and actually around the world talking about electric vehicles right now? It's all about emissions, right? So if you look at a pie chart of the emissions that we're breathing in right now, the transportation industry is anywhere between like 28 and 35%. Heard different numbers, but we're a significant part of that emissions. And so by going to whether it's electric, hybrid, hydrogen vehicles may be coming in soon, basically kind of decarbonizing that transportation. The whole idea we're doing that is try and improve the air quality that's out there. And again, this is not a Delaware phenomenon. This is a national and international issue that many states and many regions are dealing with. So we're just kind of along for the ride. And again, we're in partnership with DENREC on a lot of this. They've kind of had skin in the game and been working in this field much longer than we have. So it's been a real good partnership and cooperation working with them. Some of the other aspects and benefits, and I'll touch on this in some of the other programs that we'll go over here this morning, are some of the other benefits associated with this. So, if the carbon reduction plan, we're going to be funding a lot of, bike paths, sidewalks, things like that, alternative transportation, which not only from a transportation standpoint, but it provides health benefits as well. We all know, getting out, taking a walk, riding a bike, whether it's yourself with your family, your kids, it can be a really enjoyable time. And so we want to use the funding that's available to build that infrastructure that can kind of connect communities and get people off the road. So that's kind of the background of why we're doing all this. So again, this funding came from the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the IIJA. Again, the national goal is by 2030 to have an additional 500,000 charging stations in around the country. Again, by August of last year, so in 2022, we had to have our plan submitted of how we were going to do Delaware's part to meet that, and that was approved back in September. We had to submit an update this August, so two months ago, or yeah, we submitted an update to that, and that also has been approved. We just got that approval end of last week. So the approval means that the funding will come. So as we all know, it's great to have plans and designs, but until we get the funding to go out to construction, it's not really going to help us a whole lot. So we have funds in the bank, so to speak, so we can go out and start spending that money. And that last bullet there on that slide, we're looking at just under $18 million will be coming to DelDOT over the next 5 years. Again, and this is for the state of Delaware. I mentioned that we're working closely with DNREC. Again, the funding mechanism is coming through DelDOT, so we're the bankers, but DNREC is kind of the subject matter experts, and we're becoming subject matter experts through interacting with them and working with them. But they have a lot of the technical background because they've been working in the EV space for about 10 years now. So I want to introduce a term here called the alternative fuel corridors. And again, this is not just Delaware, this is from a national basis. The funds that we are going to be receiving through this NEVI program, the priority is we need to build electric vehicle charging stations along the alternative fuel corridors. So in Delaware, we had previously designated alternative fuel corridors being I-95, Route 1, Route 13, and Route 113. And the map there on the right of that slide kind of gives you an idea of where those corridors are. And then we also were able to add the red dots there are where are some of the fast charging stations already out there. So again, there are, as you drive, around town, and if you have an electric vehicle, you'll see charging stations, whether it's, down at the outlets, for example, they have some, Wawa, Royal Farms have charging stations as well. Some of those were privately funded. Some of those were some early funding that DNREC had done. And DNREC is also in the process right now of rolling out some funding from the Volkswagen settlement. So if you remember a few years ago, Volkswagen was caught kind of manipulating some of the data with their emissions, and they had to pay a significant fine, again, around the country. And Delaware received about I think it was about $1.2 or $1.4 million from that settlement. And the commitment was that funding had to be used to install charging stations. So DNREC is in the process right now of working with vendors to include that, or to build those out right now. So as you see some of those charging stations out there, again, they are, whoops, can somebody go on mute, please? I'm hearing some.
Jim, I got it. Thanks.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So again, there are some charging stations that are out there now, but you will be seeing some new charging stations that will be funded through the IIJA that, again, we're rolling out right now. A little bit something unique about these, and again, this is just kind of learning about the charging world. There are different levels of chargers. So with this federal funding that we're going to be receiving, the requirement is we have to use what are called DC fast chargers. So the idea is that these are chargers that you pull up to a Wawa, Royal Farms, for example, and you're going to be there for maybe 10 minutes or so. You're going to walk in, maybe, go to the bathroom, grab a soda, something to eat, something like that. And so these fast chargers, you plug them in, and you can get a very high, rate of charge for a very short period of time. So these are different than if you have a charging station at your home, where you'll be able to plug in for like 8 hours, overnight while you're sleeping, and you'll get the charge in that respect. These are kind of the super duper ones that you're plugging in. You're going to be there for a short duration, and it's going to, really kind of boost you up pretty quickly. So that's a little differentiation with this NEVI funding. And again, that's a requirement with this funding, is that's the type of chargers we have to use. So if you hear that term DC fast charger, again, that's what they are. They're fast chargers, again, short durations, what we're going to be doing. And we have worked with AECOM is the firm that we brought on board to help do some modeling. So we've kind of completed that work in, again, partnership with DelDOT, DENREC, and AECOM, of looking kind of across the state and where are the charging deserts, so to speak, and where are we going to need to add some chargers. So that modeling has taken place, and again, that's both for the federal program that we have the funding and also the state program that we're going to be doing as well. So with this work, one of the components that we want to look at is equity, right? We want to make sure that we're putting these charging stations, not just, down at the beach where, all of our friends from, DC and Maryland come over and clog up our roads and spend a lot of money, obviously, and need charging, but where are there other areas that are needing? So you may have seen, Stephanie gave a presentation at the last town hall talking about the equity analysis tool that we have been working on, and it's a really great, powerful piece of lots of data that we want to be able to use for not just this program, but for all programs across the department. So whether you're in planning and design, maintenance, this equity tool is a great tool to use. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but if you're interested or if you haven't heard about this or want to hear more about it, feel free to reach out to Steph and I. Would be happy to have a deeper dive. But just wanted to let you know it's a layer that will be used as we're looking to roll out this program, and again help make sure that we're very equitable in our decision making across the state. So where we are right now, we have an RFP, a request for proposal. It is on the street right now. We had our pre-bid last Thursday, so bidders who are interested in this NEVI program could listen in. We kind of gave a high-level overview of the program, what we see DelDOT doing with this program in the state of Delaware, and providing an opportunity for the vendors to ask some questions. We had around 48, 49 people on board or on the call, and this was from across the country because a lot of these vendors and manufacturers of this equipment, they're national. They're ChargePoint, EVgo. They're national and international companies. They're not just here in Delaware. And again, all the states across the country are rolling out these programs. So whether you're in Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, or Idaho, we're all working towards the same things of building out our alternative fuel corridors and getting these charging stations in the ground. So everybody's kind of working together. Obviously, states are working independently, but big picture, we're all trying to do the same thing. So again, a lot of these vendors are national. So we had several of them on the call as well. So with these RFPs, the idea is that a manufacturer like ChargePoint, for example, who makes the actual charging stations, that they would partner with a property owner, like again, a Wawa Royal Farms, for example, and they, some type of a partnership is struck between them. They also then have to work with the local utility company because one of the things, and maybe you've heard this, is it's great to have the plan to build out all these charging stations, but where's the energy? Is the grid available for it? So we are actually requiring in these RFP that we put out on the street that there has to be a host site agreement that the vendors are on board, and also a letter from the utility company that will be supplying the energy for those DC fast chargers, that they in fact either have the existing capacity or they will be able to add the capacity to make sure that these stations can be built. And want to be real clear on this part is there is not an intent for these charging stations to go on state property or for the state to operate and maintain them. So most states are in that same boat that, we don't want to have the chargers on our property. We want these to be on private property. And we certainly don't want to operate and maintain them as well, because one of the requirements in the federal legislation is this equipment has to be operational for 5 years. So for 5 years, these equipment has to have a 97% uptake rate, meaning they have to be available 97% of the time for the next 5 years. And again, that's the legislation, that's the requirement, that's what's in our RFP. And we actually have additional kind of contractual language in there to ensure that that actually does take place. So we, again, not looking to put that on our property because, again, we don't want to operate and maintain them. So where we are, like I said, so the proposals are due on October 19th. So we anticipate getting pretty good feedback at that point. We think there's a lot of interest out there in this program. So we hope we have a lot of good projects and good locations to choose from. So we will be getting them later this month. We're anticipating, and hopefully through the month of November, we will be able to review and score those submittals. And our goal is that we would be able to award these by the end of this calendar year. And so that's just, again, the contractual part of it, being able to get that done. Then hopefully rolling into 2024, we would actually be able to start construction and, again, get these charging stations out in society so that we can, kind of populate our state and other states and get them up out there and available for people's use. Some of the challenges there that I referenced, the two things that we hear about, because there are some states that are a little bit further ahead. There's most states are actually further behind. So we're kind of the Goldilocks. We're in a good place, we think. The equipment availability, we all hear about supply chain. That's been a concern that's been raised. And again, the energy grid upgrades. Some locations we think are going to be readily available for adding these charging stations. Some, we've been engaged with the utility companies across the state with this program, and some of them have kind of led us to believe that there might be a little time delay for them to upgrade. Not that it can't be done, it just might not be readily available to plug right in. But again, we've got a little bit of time to do that. So partnering and having these conversations in advance of award of the contracts, we think has been important and will be helpful. Again, there the first bullet there kind of highlighted again, utility companies. It's not going to do us any good to put these charging stations out there if there's no energy to them. So we understand the critical importance of that. And so, again, engaging with them early. We also have some work groups and stakeholders that we've had discussions with. We did have a public workshop. We had 2 public workshops in June and September of last year, and we just had a call yesterday with the team between AECOM, DNREC, and DelDOT, and we're envisioning having some more public outreach here in the near term as well to kind of just keep people updated on where we are and kind of the direction that we're going. So now I want to kind of do a slight pivot. So everything to this point has been talking about the national program. And again, that's national, meaning the federal funding that we receive, building out the alternative fuel corridors along I-95, Route 1, Route 13, and Route 113. Well, that's all fine, well, and good for kind of the folks that are commuting through our state. What about those who live in our state, right? So we want to kind of build a program for kind of what we're talking about being off the alternative fuel corridor, getting to municipalities and communities and neighborhoods. We want to have, programs available for that. So again, same group of people, AECOM, DNREC, working on the state program as well. We are, engaging with them. Again, that modeling that we've done to kind of look across the state of where are those deserts going to be. So we're talking about it. We've had some conversation with the governor's office, looking for some potential funding that might be able to fund this program. So nothing concrete to reference right now, other than, we've got a plan. We've had the conversations. It's a continual conversation, and we think it's really important that we can get out to the municipality, the cities, and the communities themselves. We've also, in parallel with all this, workforce engagement has been a critical part of this, because it's like everything else that we all do. We all understand, the vacancy rates in many of our fields, and so we need to have a workforce that is available to install this equipment and operate and maintain it over the long term, because electric vehicles are here, and they're going to be penetrating the market a lot more even as we go forward. So we've been in discussions with Department of Labor and Department of Education about how can we get to like some of the VOTEX, for example, and get some programs available for them. So real good conversations that we've had with them. And so we're excited to work with them. And again, the last bullet there, we've done the modeling, and again, we kind of know where we want to populate and add these charging stations across the state. Some other items that are on the radar. So again, if you're kind of plugged in on the legislative side of things, there's Advanced Clean Cars 2. That is a California program that by 2035, basically you will not be able to buy an internal combustion engine vehicle. They will all be electric at that point. There's been conversations about that here in Delaware. Nothing has been signed yet, but there are conversations about that. And another thing that we do have approval on already, and again, there's been a group that's been discussing this, is charging fees for charging a fee for charging stations that are in state property. So right now, the chargers that are populated across state properties, you can charge for free. Now, for the most part, that equipment is set up for state fleet vehicles, but there have been occasions where folks have been charging there. So the goal that the task force that DENREC put together, and again we've met here in the last week, by January of 24, so here in a few months, there will be a charge to use those charging stations moving forward. And again, that was legislatively approved. Again, if you go to a Wawa Royal Farms, you're already having to do that. But there are, a number of charging stations on state property that there haven't been fees that have been charged, but that will be changing moving forward. Couple other, again, things that are on our radar, the highway safety of EVs. You may hear and see horror stories about, if an electric vehicle catches on fire, all the challenges from an emergency response standpoint. Can say that, that's certainly an ongoing conversation. There has been training. There are discussions taking place across Delaware and again, across the country about that. So it's a challenge. It's a concern. I don't think it should prevent us from moving forward, but we just need to have good dialogue with the appropriate people, whether it's the equipment manufacturers, emergency responders, our DelDOT people, if they come upon an incident where there's an electric vehicle on fire, what should they do, kind of thing. So again, ongoing conversation. Vehicle availability. So one of the goals with OMB and fleet is to, continue to increase the electric vehicles in the fleet. Well, they have orders. They have ordered electric vehicles, but the delivery time from the manufacturers is a bit of a delay right now. So again, we can't control that in any way. But if you again pay attention to the news right now, the manufacturers, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, they know that this is coming. They're working towards that. So the market will be there in the future. They just got to kind of get things ramped up. And the last bullet there, again, the pace of the EV infrastructure development and deployment, getting these charging stations out there so that the term you might hear is range anxiety. So people might be like, yeah, I believe in electric vehicles, but I'm afraid I can't get from point A to point B. I know if in my internal combustion vehicle, there's gas stations everywhere, but are there enough electric vehicle charging stations? So again, that's the whole idea with this program, is to, get that infrastructure built so that folks don't have that range anxiety. The lost fuel tax is also an area of concern, and I can tell you we are engaged with the University of Delaware to kind of do some modeling to see what that will look like, and then also what are some of the ways that we can recoup some of that lost funding. Various states across the country are doing various things. So the nice thing is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Some states use what's called a vehicle miles traveled. So they actually have a device in their vehicle that tracks their mileage. Obviously, some people have significant concerns about that from a privacy standpoint of, not everybody's going to be thrilled if the government says, yeah, here, put this device in your vehicle, and I swear we're not tracking where you go. We just want to know how many miles. Some people might not be in favor of that. So Some states, Texas most recently, have increased their registration fee. So if you have an electric vehicle, when you go to register your vehicle, there's an additional cost associated with that. So that's another model that can be used. Some states are looking at taxing when you're charging your vehicle, that a tax, there would be an additional tax to that would go to the state, kind of just like today when you go to get your gasoline, the state gets a portion of that. So many things are being discussed. Nothing is concrete at this point. But again, we have the University of Delaware, the Institute for Public Administration up there is looking at options, both at what the lost revenue will be as the penetration rate of these electric vehicles go up, and then also some potential options. So our goal is to present that obviously to Secretary Majeski and Shantae, and then ultimately to the legislators, because more than likely some type of legislation will be required for those items. We are so want to shout out to Stephanie for working on this. So we're working on updating our website, our hub. So we will be rolling that out, and I believe it's available. But so if this wasn't enough for you about electric vehicles and you want more information, if you go to our hub, this is the actual website, or you can just Google DelDOT EVs, and it will take you to this site. So this has public workshop, gives you some background, obviously, talks about the workshops that we've had. If you're really interested in reading our NEVI plan, what we had to submit to the federal government to get the funding approval a year and a half ago, that's on there as well, and just some FAQs. So again, if you're really interested in EVs, there's a lot more information that's out there. So I want to kind of transition to a couple other programs, just real quick to let you know about some other things that Steph and I are working on. So the next one is the carbon reduction strategy. So with this, we have to come up with a carbon reduction plan. This is due to the federal highways by November 15th of this year. So literally about 5-6 weeks from now. So we've been engaged with this. We're working with Jacobs on this, and partnering also again with DENREC, because they have some EPA funding and some programs that are kind of lockstep with this. So we're working in collaboration with them. Again, this funding came through the bipartisan infrastructure law. DelDOT will be receiving approximately $27 million for this. And again, the whole idea with this program is to reduce carbon emissions associated with transportation. And again, goes back to what I said at the very beginning is, transportation is the, around about 1/3 of the emissions that are out there are associated with transportation. So whatever we can do to reduce that, we certainly want to do. Not going to go through this slide in great detail, other than reference that there's a laundry list of eligible activities under this program. I did italicize a few of the ones that we are looking at. The TAP program, we've had conversations with planning with Jeff, talking about some programs or some projects that we can fund through his program. Again, bike paths, sidewalks, things like that. So we've identified a few programs. Also working with Peter Haig in traffic, again, some of his pedestrian projects. What can we do to assist with that? So we have some projects in the queue on that. Looking at freight movement, so again, working in collaboration with planning and U of D folks, what can we do with the movement of freight? We're looking at truck parking is a much bigger concern in Delaware than I think we realized when we started these programs. But again, kind of identifying where are there needs for truck parking so that we can safely get trucks off the side of the road, and then potentially, even get them to, shut the motors off and be able to keep the creature comforts through some type of electrification. So we had some equipment in the past that didn't work out so well. But we want to look at that again as an option to decarbonize the transportation. And again, looking at any way we can deploy electric vehicles any further. So again, we can use this funding for adding additional charging stations. We can help, DTC, John Sisson, with his transit organization, if he has some programs. He's been really successful in getting grants himself, but we have reached out to him if he has some programs maybe or some projects that don't fit necessarily with some of his available funding. We can assist as well. So again, just a laundry list of things there, and to the Federal Highways credit, they're providing great flexibility with this, so it's been helpful. And one of the other projects that's not referenced here, if you're familiar with the town of Odessa, if you're familiar with Route 299 that kind of leads outside of Odessa heading to the east, that's a roadway that floods quite often. So we actually were able to use carbon reduction funding for some advanced warning signs. So again, you might be familiar with like Woodland Beach and Slaughter Beach, that they have those signs that flash when there's water on the road. So we were able to leverage this funding for that project, and it's in construction right now. Hopefully it gets done pretty soon. But again, just kind of the flexibility that we've been provided to do things to again reduce our carbon footprint. Again, on our hub, we have further information. So again, and more information is available. Next one thing I kind of want to talk about is what's called an environmental product declaration, or an EPD. So there's lots of words on there, and the easiest way and the basic way I would like to explain this is a nutritional label for construction materials. So when we're out there, building, roads and bridges out of, concrete, steel, asphalt, whatever the case may be, those materials that are used to build the infrastructure, there's an environmental cost, so to speak, or environmental footprint that's left by extracting those materials out of the ground and then transporting them and then manufacturing them. So there's again a cost associated with that. So we and again other states are looking at this environmental product declaration as a way of quantifying, when we build a road, build a bridge, build a sidewalk, whatever the case may be, what a term that's used is, what is our global warming potential? And so we're literally in the process right now. We received a grant from the Federal Highways through what was called their Climate Challenge Grant. And we're working with Dr. Lee, I know he's on the call, with the University of Delaware, AECOM, and Stephanie and I, to kind of quantify where we are today and what future reduction emissions can we do. So the idea basically is, how can we make construction more green? And so I'm super excited about this. But again, the best way to explain this is just like when you go to the grocery store and you can look at the side of whatever you want to buy, you can look at a nutrition label and it tells you, calories, grams of salt, fat, et cetera. We're developing, and again, the world, basically, this is an international thing. We're trying to determine what that is for each of the construction materials. So before I leave that, so here's your little bit of trivia that you can impress your friends and family with tonight. So the manufacturing of concrete, right? Concrete is the second most used product in the world behind water. Concrete everywhere. So the manufacturing around the world of concrete emits about 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions across the entire world. So whatever we can do to minimize that as much as we possibly can is going to be an environmental benefit, but also meeting the engineering process as well. And there are things that we can do from a material standpoint to actually address that, using recycled materials and things like that. So this program, as we're developing it, that's kind of what we're looking to do, is encourage the increased use of recycled materials, but again, meeting the engineering requirements. Want to make sure that everybody's very clear, is we're not sacrificing safety by doing this, but it's like a three-legged stool of looking at the environment, the economics, and the engineering of it. So more details to come on that. Again, that's kind of everything that I just went through. There is buy clean policies, several states that I referenced there, California, Colorado, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, that already have these buy clean policies. The federal government is doing this as well. I had a friend in the construction industry that talking to him one day last week, and he said they saw their first contract in Washington, D.C. for a building that had this requirement in there. So there, again, this is something that's going to be rolling out. And then here locally, again, just bring this to your attention. So there was legislation that was signed called the Delaware Climate Change Solution Act of 2023. This sets GHG, greenhouse gas reductions for the state of Delaware. So this is legislation that has been signed. So this is kind of our marching orders here locally in Delaware. And that kind of that sub-bullet there references that by beginning of July of 2025, which, you know, it seems like it's real far away, but it's really not. State of Delaware agencies are going to have to develop clean construction procedures and preferences. So our feeling is that by developing this EPD program, we're actually going to be maybe a little bit ahead of that time frame, so that by, you know, when July 2025 rolls around, we'll already be able to show our program. And again, what we want to do is kind of baseline where we are today here in 2023 and into 2024, and then set realistic reduction targets moving forward in our construction operations. So more to come on that. Again, we received a FHWA Climate Challenge grant for that. We're working with our material suppliers, our contractors, and again, the team internally that will be working on that is University of Delaware with Dr. Lee and AECOM in partnership. And the last thing that I want to talk about, I think this is the last thing, is our resilience improvement plan. So we worked on the Delaware Resilience Improvement Plan. So we have a DRIP. So, you know, got to have a good acronym for a program. So we developed this resilience improvement plan. This was under, again, one of the federal legislation programs called the PROTECT program. And this was not a requirement, but what it does is this allows us to get more federal money. So, you know, most projects were, you know, 80-20, you know, 80% federal, 10 or 20% us. Now that we've had our resilience improvement plan approved, and the next step is to roll that into our long range transportation plan. Once we do that, it'll be a 90-10. So we'll ultimately get another 10% of federal funding by submitting this. So that was kind of our driving force. And also, you know, Steph and I had talked, is like, you know, we're doing this work anyway, so we might as well document it and get the extra federal funding. So that's what we've actually done. So this is again in partnership, and it's great that, you know, Stephanie and Maureen have been involved in this, because this is asset management working along with resiliency. There's a natural connection here. So we don't want to keep, you know, rebuilding roads and bridges that keep getting damaged due to you know, storm events and things like that. So this resilience improvement plan, and again the asset management plan that Steph and Maureen are working on is working together very well. So ultimately what we're trying to get to is, you know, just making sure that the state is resilient as we possibly can. You know, what can we do in the, whether it's in the planning, the design, the construction, or the maintenance of our infrastructure to ensure that we have you know, a very resilient infrastructure, because as we know, that's what our customers, that's what the traveling public is expecting from us. So again, not going to go through, you know, slide by slide, but again, this is just kind of pulled some of the information out of the plan. Again, it has been approved. We were the second one to get approved, and you know, now we're getting emails from other folks going, hey, can you send us our plan? Because more than likely there'll be some, you know, cutting and pasting and stealing, which is perfectly fine. Got no problem with that. But again, it's big picture. It's, you know, from concept to planning, design, construction, is, you know, what are the things that we can do to make sure that the roadways and the infrastructure in general are resilient. And again, just another slide showing how all this is kind of interacting. Again, we work closely with DENREC on this. They're working on some, if you may be familiar with the climate action plan that the governor rolled out almost 2 years ago now. DENREC is in the process right now of updating that climate action plan. We're providing some input in the transportation parts of that. So again, there's a real good collaboration working with DENREC on these environmental programs, and we greatly appreciate their partnership. So, all right, another slide about the DRIP, and that was it. So I appreciate everybody's time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those programs or kind of anything that Steph and I are working on in the resilience and sustainability side.
Thanks so much, Jim. So hi, everybody that joined us a little late. Apologize for all of the hiccups that we've experienced this week. If you have any questions for Jim, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Dr. Lee.
Jim, one quick question. One thing I learned in the last year and a half was that per mile costs for the electric buses are exceeding diesel costs. And that's because of electric rates and peak hours and all of those things. Has anybody talked about either state or federal legislation to work with the utility companies and fix that?
So the conversations are ongoing, because you're 100% right. So the electric buses and again, DTC, give them credit, John and team have a decarbonization program and plan in place. They've obviously have existing electric buses. They got some grants for some more. They're actually getting some hydrogen buses as well. And that is, I think, one of his number one concerns is the demand charge that he's having to pay for his buses. Legislators in Delaware are aware of that, and conversations with the utility companies and with some legislators have taken place and are ongoing. So don't have a definitive answer right now, but it's a great point, Rusty, and you're 100% right. And those conversations are ongoing.
Thank you.
And it's not, that whole conversation is not unique to Delaware. Every state's having that exact conversation of getting the buses, because there's a significant lead time in getting them, and then charging them, and then even beyond. And I mentioned this is the safety of those. You may or may not be familiar. Connecticut had a bus fire, electric bus fire. I forget when it was, and there was just recently an NTSB finalized a report, and there was actually a meeting internally a couple weeks ago to talk about some of the safety aspects of that. Again, making sure that our staff are safe if they come upon that incident, and also the traveling public. So there's a lot of balls in the air around electric vehicles and all that, and I don't think anybody has all the answers, but everybody's trying to learn together, work together to make this a viable options moving forward. Get off my soapbox.
No, and to support that, Jim, I know that we have conversations when we meet. We have a group that gathers to talk about state issues and concerns just all over in support of the governor's cabinet. So these are conversations that come up, I think, all over for across every field that we are covering, whether it be transportation, environment, even education. We're working hard now to get kind of the Department of Education as part of the state planning strategic committee. So yeah, thanks, Dr. Lee. Is there any other questions? Being none, this has been recorded, will be posted as soon as we can get it up on the DelDOT YouTube channel. Yesterday's presentation by Kathy Smith, which was also really a lot of great information regarding DART Reimagine, will also be on the DelDOT's YouTube channel, and both presentations will also be available by request. So please let anyone who might be frustrated know the Zoom issue was not my fault. It was my account was removed. They had thought I had already departed DelDOT. I will be leaving as of Friday. So thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And again, notice will go out once we have everything recorded. And Sophie, I do see you. Yes, I will make sure you get a copy of the presentation. But again, notice will go out once we have these recorded and up on the DelDOT YouTube channel. So thanks, everybody. Take care. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow for public input. We have the public input team coming and doing a presentation for DelDOT as well. So have a great afternoon, everyone.